It is about telling the investor what is the right thing to do. And we as a stock exchange tend to do that a lot. Under the guidance of the regulator SEBI, we are primarily mandated to do a lot of investor education, and that is what we do it wholeheartedly. My aim and our aim at BSE is always to make it simple, understandable, so that people understand what is sent. Again, I think repeating the same point is that you send output to anybody or communication to anybody, that person should understand that. So there are 2-3 things that we are doing. One, of course, we are segmenting our output as well, basis the investors that we have. So again, I think the traditional investor segments are, of course, your Gen Zs, your millennials, your Gen X for that matter, baby boomers for that matter. We are trying to segment it like that so that people are able to understand it. The common man or the person who's wanting to invest, somebody sitting out of maybe a small city in any part of the country and wants to invest, is able to understand and then invest and make the right decisions for that matter. Our good amount of work that we put out in terms of communication to at least investors is all about what are the frauds that are happening online, how people are getting duped, how dubious people are calling, sending things and trying to make you rich overnight. Please don't do that. Anybody who is claiming to make you rich overnight is an imposter. Women are far more resilient and far more stable in their investments. Men tend to basically, at least men who tend to have a lot of money will possibly, or some bit of money, will try and do trading or try and maybe invest in something so that they become overnight rich. Women are far more conservative in their investments, and they are far more stable in their investments. At least for the people who are young, I would rather ask them to invest long term. Think about it from the long term perspective. For middle-aged guys, I would want to think of also long term, but also look at it from an asset allocation perspective, because they are somewhere in the middle of their career path for that matter. We, in fact, BSE with NSE has around 50 regional centers across the country. We use these centers to educate people. So we'll call investors, we'll educate them about the financial concepts, what is the right, what is the wrong thing, and try and basically let it percolate down.
Hello and welcome to the HT Brand Leadership Series, a series of one-on-one interactions with brand and marketing leaders who share their industry insights and strategies that have helped shape their stories. This series, hosted by Hindustan Times, offers a behind-the-scenes glimpse of how leaders adjust their strategies for changing consumer behavior while leveraging media channels that improve customer relationships. We have with us Prahlad Salian, Head of Corporate Communications, BSE India. Prahlad has played a pivotal role in shaping the exchange's public image and stakeholder engagement strategies. With a rich background in marketing and communications, his insights offer a valuable perspective on the evolving landscape of corporate branding and innovation. Prahlad, welcome to the HT Brand Leadership Series.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you for having me in this show.
I would ask you the common question that most people will ask you, how are the markets today?
Please don't look at it from the short term. That's what I would suggest. Markets can be volatile in the short term. Think long term. If you're an investor, you are looking at long term. That's why you will not affect yourself as well as your portfolio, because people tend to take short term decisions based on the volatility. Don't do that. Think long term.
So you have to have an investor mindset.
Yes, you have to have an investor mindset. Not a trader mindset, sorry.
Not a trader mindset. Got it. So let me jog back. Tell me about your growing up years in terms of what inspired you to take this journey in the field of corporate communications. How did this career choice come about?
Completely by accident. If somebody would have asked me in my childhood what I would do, I would maybe be a bank teller. I'll be very clear about it, because my handwriting was really bad. I was really bad in terms of creativity and all. But I'll tell you what, I think all my readings in my childhood, mostly comics and all the readings that I've done in terms of fictional stories, helped me later. Happened by accident that I landed up in this job. And then after a point of time, I started learning it a little bit. I started understanding the nuances of communication. One thing that happened with me was, while I used to do, when you start off your career, you're just basically doing it like a BAU. You just don't understand anything, you do whatever is told to you. But at a critical point of time, I realized it's just not about doing whatever is told, but also thinking beyond that. That is the change that happened in me, and from there it's just been growing. Another thing that has helped me over my communication years is firstly the creativity, second is the research. A good part of my career has been with CRISIL, and there I did a lot of research. There I did a lot of, if I might say, creative terms, soul searching in terms of whatever I write. Understood. And that helped me, and that is where it also helps me in my role currently as well.
So how would you classify the aspects that influenced you today in terms of any personal anecdote or specific experiences that you had while doing your research that today is helping you perform this role so well?
Again, I think it is purely about developing your critical thinking, right? So while people think creativity is just creativity, it is also about critical thinking. And that is what I learned over the years of experience, primarily from my peers or from my seniors. Even at BSc, I've learned so many things from my senior management tier, from MD or for that matter, my boss, CRO. I tend to basically learn a lot of things. In fact, every experience that I do, every kind of experience, any feedback that I get is something that I use it as a learning for me. Because that's how you basically grow. Because many a times you are very bullheaded about your thought. If you get it, and there will be a pushback from people. While you might take it as a pushback, if you take it as a learning, you understand it from that perspective that you are able to think better. And that is what I take it from that perspective.
Understood. So BSc has had a long history. It's got a 150-year legacy. It's almost like the face of Bombay or the financial capital of India in a way. It's almost like the biggest landmark that's unmissable. How do you see yourself, or how do you see your role changing, or the role of corporate communications, if I have to say correctly, evolve with financial institutions like BSc India? It's a huge responsibility.
So yeah, you rightly said it. BSc is completing its 150 years. July 9th will complete 150 years. It's from whatever it started as a very, very small set of group of people starting off as stockbrokers. Now it's become one of the largest stock market in the country. It is, and things have changed. Things have changed. Communication has changed completely. Previously, it was just about information. Now it is just beyond information. It is about telling the investor what is the right thing to do. And we as a stock exchange tend to do that a lot. Under the guidance of the regulator SEBI, we are primarily mandated to do a lot of investor education, and that is what we do it wholeheartedly. So our primary role is that. And with the changing times, what is happening is previously it used to be maybe a hard copy, something is sent on email, but now everything is digital. So we have to come out with a lot of communication which goes to investors, which goes to the right set of stakeholders in the right format. Snackable, non-snackable, something which is useful. If you don't make it useful in current times when people don't even read beyond a para, it is important to send the right content so that people understand what you're sending and just not send it for the sake of it.
Yeah, I've said this repeatedly. A lot of people would hate me for saying this, but at the end of the day, BFSI is a boring category. And when you're talking about financial planning with somebody, the person switches off also very quickly. It's a boring subject, but it's a very important and pertinent subject as well. And sometimes the jargons get very complex. Stock market, again, very intimidating for newcomers. So it basically also is essential that when you're communicating or when you're sending out your messages to the relevant audience, you also have compliance to ensure that you can't pivot away from what has to be told and has to be given also in a more simple and a clear communication. So how are you navigating that piece?
So I think two things. One, because of my background of doing a lot of research, I am very fact-based. Everything that I put out is purely based on some or the other fact or numbers. That I think adds a lot of genuineness or authenticity to the output that goes out. One is that. Second, I've always been of the view that you can't have technical output going out so much. Not many people can understand the technical stuff. Not many people. We've got some 21 crore UCCs or investors in the stock market. Maybe 0.1% would understand the technical aspect. Everybody else would want to make it simple. So my aim and our aim at BSc is always to make it simple, understandable, so that people understand what is sent. Again, I think repeating the same point is that you send output to anybody or communication to anybody, that person should understand that.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, it is still perceived as very traditional because of the legacy it has. So how much room for creativity is there? Because you have the whole compliance angle riding on every syllable, I'm sure. So what is it that, how are you making more space for creativity to reach out to a diverse audience, considering your audience is moving across different platforms and they will not consume your regular information in a straitjacket way?
So there are 2-3 things that we are doing. One, of course, we are segmenting our output as well, basis the investors that we have. So again, I think the traditional investor segments are, of course, your Gen Zs, your millennials, your Gen X for that matter, baby boomers for that matter. We are trying to segment it like that so that people are able to understand it. One is that. Second is we are trying to also do a lot of regional output to it.
Okay, yes.
Because while English is the, if I might say, the lingua franca in terms of communication within corporates, it's not the way people understand it. And we are having a lot of investors coming from the hinterland of the country, right? So we are seeing a lot of people coming from non-metro cities, the tier 2, tier 3 cities, and those people understand content in their language. So we are trying to make it more regional. We are trying to make it, of course, creativity is something that you end up picking up from a lot of stuff, inspirational, whatever is happening outside. Second is making more regional, more understandable, so that the common man or the person who's wanting to invest, somebody sitting out of maybe a small city in any part of the country and wants to invest, is able to understand and then invest and make the right decisions for that matter.
Got it. Tell me one thing for our audiences. For most financial institutions, I think the two most important parts are financial literacy, a narrative on that, and also financial inclusion. How you weighing both of these pillars? Where are you putting more energies on?
I think financial literacy is something where we put out a lot of effort. Inclusion is something that is already being done by the government through a lot of initiatives that they have done. Of course, digital, the infrastructure that has been developed is helping inclusion. So anybody, as in I spoke about it, is that a lot of people from any small part of the country or any rural part of the country is able to invest right from their pocket, right on a mobile phone. So inclusion is happening. It is about now educating them. Everybody is getting a lot of information on their mobile about a lot of investment things, maybe a lot of stock tips, a lot of fake investment advices.
Correct, yeah.
Our work here is, as a frontline regulator for the regulator, is to educate and literate the people about how and what is the right thing to do. We can always suggest, we can always give them the information, the right set of information. Finally, they'll take the call. But it is about, if you don't give them the information, they might make the wrong call. So our work here is to give them the right kind of information.
Correct. I think there's also so much noise around financial advice and financial planning. You can almost say there's an overkill, or there's information overkill. So how you enabling your audiences to differentiate what to ignore and what to follow? Because for them, anybody who's trying to make them, who's giving them information, this is how you become rich, is where they will likely to get attracted to. So how are your communication strategies evolving?
Again, my point, we try and make it more simple. One is to make it simple as possible. Second is basically to give out fair warnings to everybody about what is happening. So we end up also sending a lot of investor education about what are the cyber crimes and frauds that are happening out. So our good amount of work that we put out in terms of communication to at least investors is all about what are the frauds that are happening online, how people are getting duped, how dubious people are calling, sending things and trying to make you rich overnight. Please don't do that. Anybody who is claiming to make you rich overnight is a imposter, right? So that is what we do. We try and educate people around that.
Clearly, because looking at the fraudulent transactions that have taken place, I think it's high time that we talk about safety and security of investors. Can you discuss any campaign or initiative that enhanced BSE's brand image and visibility towards its relevant stakeholders that immediately comes to your mind?
So we've done multiple things. I think last year we did this, so World Investor Week. We have a World Investor Week that is celebrated around the 2nd or the 3rd week of October. It's an international thing. It's also celebrated in India. SEBI has its own set of rules and guidances that we do. So at that point of time, we had done a lot of stuff in terms of folklore. So what we had done during that point of time, we had created a Navrasa, which is basically trying to create some folk stories and educate investors through those folk stories about the rights and the wrongs about investments. So that is a campaign that was pretty much appreciated by the regulator as well, and it got great viewership online. So that's something that I can maybe stand out. Over and above that, beyond that, we continue to do a lot of stuff about education, about stuff which is relatable. Like example, I'll just give you an example of how there was a World Environment Day about a week back, about 10 days back. We spoke about how you are trying to save environment with small habits, how these small habits can also be inculcated in your investments as well.
Correct.
So you save your environment, you save your portfolio also. That's how you try to.
That's pretty interesting. Prahlad, I'm also going to talk about a little, or rather the audience would be very keen to understand how does your team communicate with SEBI? What are the expectations from SEBI when they are conversing with you? What are the aspects they want you to emphasize on when the communications is rolled out? So can you give us throw some light on that?
So we tend to have regular communication with the regulator. I think we work under the guidance of them. So they tend to basically give us ideas about possible ideas about the themes what they would like to cover. So there are two lines of communication that happens. One is that you have to continuously keep educating investors, which we do regularly. Beyond that, any particular topic of their choice. So like SEBI chairperson yesterday or day before spoke about how they are going to basically focus on cyber crime, cyber frauds. So then basis the guidance that is given by the regulator, we will speak about, or we will try and speak more about that particular theme while keeping the regular stuff also going on. Because what happens is, while cyber crime, cyber fraud is there, but there is also an important aspect of educating a lot of new stuff, right? So we keep doing that, and basis that conversation keeps happening. So we keep reporting about what is happening, where we are going in terms of what we are doing in terms of communication, and it's a natural flow of communication that happens between the regulator and the exchanges.
For example, if we have spoken about cyber frauds, obviously it is important that you will go and do a digital campaign on that. Right. Tell us a little bit about that in terms of how are you adapting your communication piece to talk about cyber frauds using digital platforms?
So there are two ways. One, of course, we end up doing a lot of content in-house, where we will create possibly stackable content, which is on either an infographic or a short reel, or possibly a small post around what we can speak about that particular topic. That's one. Second, we also collab with a lot of media channels like y'all, where we will try and, because there are two things to it. One, we will have our own organic reach that we have, right? But if we tie up with publication like yours, we end up having a larger reach. So we do that. But however have control over all the content. So we will basically pass on the message that this is what we want to do. So we will do both ways, try and reach. So from that perspective, while we do it, we have our own perspective about things, and the publication will also have their own perspective and the reach. So we end up amplifying both ways and reaching a larger audience for that matter.
No, in this case, it's a win-win for all, because at the end of the day, we are also trying to give enriching content for our audiences, and specifically something around keeping them alert or alarmed about cyber fraud. It works in their favor because that's still information. Tell us, how do you see emerging technologies play a role in shaping the future of corporate communications? Any thoughts on that?
I think it's playing a very important role. Right from ChatGPT to or any other AI, I think it is playing a very important role. Right from creativity to not only on the content but also on the visuals for that matter. It's becoming easier for that matter. However, saying that, it's not completely reliable. You have to basically tune it basis whatever you think is right for that audience that we are speaking about. You can't just blindly trust it. So as they speak about, it's prompting, it's putting the right prompts, right? Giving the right prompts, using regional variants around it, trying to basically localize this basis the output that you want, and making use of it for that matter. So use it to the best benefit. I think this is the future for that matter. This is how you're going to progress in the future. Improves our TAT, improves efficiency, but also have control over it. You can't just be blindly about using it. Use it in the right way. Improve your overall output to the consumer or to the end viewer for that matter.
So you've basically given an open invitation to AI to start looking at content that BSE India is creating.
Of course, as I said, right, it is important to basically move with times. Over our 150 years of inception or legacy, the exchange has also moved with times, right? Adapted, used new technologies. So before 1990s, we used to, or the entire BSE used to be a physical way of dealing with securities, right? As soon as technology happened, the regulator came in, we started adopting technology. Similarly, now that we move forward, it is important for us to basically adapt to technology, both in terms of communication as well as internal operations as well. So BSE is heavily investing in terms of technology, if not AI and ChatGPTs, but technology for operational aspect. Similarly, we can use this for our benefit, so that it improves our reach for that matter.
You were telling me earlier about how you segment your audiences between Gen Zs, millennials, and baby boomers, but that it doesn't really stop there. You know, at the end of the day, you're also talking to retired pensioners, you're talking to mid-career individuals. So how are you diversifying your communication strategy? Because there are different needs that need to be catered to all these kind of cohorts. So how are you managing? And then there are also stakeholders from various investors who are investing, even taking larger risks. So how are you talking to these different kind of communities?
I think when we do the segmentation, we are doing across, right? So I spoke about Gen Zs, millennials, because that's the large set of investors who are there currently as such. But we also speak about retired citizens, right? We also speak to the Gen X for that matter. We speak to Gen Zs because there are a lot of new young guys who are coming into the markets who are getting influenced uh, by the fly by the night kind of an operators and trying to invest for that matter, right? So we are trying to speak with all of them, and we are trying to basically look at the topics or look at the areas that are affecting each of them and trying to speak with them in their language. That is one. Second, again, I think I spoke to you about it before as well. We are trying to make it very regional, speak in their language. So while there are people within these segments who are there in terms of the generational gap, but also in terms of the language things, right? So we are hitting them in both ways. One, of course, segmenting it to a particular segment of investors, but also on the other side. Secondly, you spoke about career-wise people. So mid-career, what is the plan? What is the thought process behind them? People who are young, what would it be? So at least for the people who are young, I would rather ask them to invest long term. Think about it from the long term perspective. Middle-aged guys, I would want to think of also long term, but also look at it from an asset allocation perspective because they are in somewhere in middle of their career path for that matter. Then there is a large segment of women who are entering the investment industry for that matter. We also focus a lot on them. Because while they used to be traditionally the homemakers or the housewives they used to be called, now they are called the homemakers, but they are also now the bread earners for families, right? They have some surplus income, they have some money in their hands. So how do they? Because traditionally what used to happen is even if a woman was earning, the money decisions used to be taken by the husband, the man of the house. Yeah. It could be the father, it could be the husband, it could be the brother for that matter. So I'm not saying that we are not trying to basically take that power away from the other guys, but it should be the decision which is more independent for that matter. They also should have a say. They should also understand what they're investing. That is what we are trying to do. So basically giving more power to the hands of the investor in terms of education.
In fact, I think women are a very significant force. In fact, they are a lot of brands across mutual funds are trying to aim and target women so that they become their investors. So clearly there is a huge scope of financial literacy that needs to go to women.
In fact, just to add on that point, there is a lot of surveys which have done that women are far more resilient and far more stable in their investments. Men tend to basically, at least men who tend to have a lot of money will possibly, or some bit of money, will try and do trading or try and maybe invest in something so that they become overnight rich. Women are far more conservative in their investments and they are far more stable in their investments.
There's a study done on this.
Yeah, there are multiple studies on that for the matter.
Correct. So you're better off giving your money to a woman so that it's safer.
Right, maybe.
Also, I wanted to touch upon in times of black swan events, when markets tank globally, the ripple effect comes to India, or there's a huge scam that gets unearthed. There was an Adani scenario that took place which affected the markets. The tariff war suddenly came about. So at these times, the investor confidence gets shaken. How much ever we may try to say that stay in long term, it's okay, it's a good opportunity to buy, but it does affect investor sentiment. How do you then manage and navigate those comms?
So there are two things to it. One is that we don't go very topical, because I'll tell you what, those kind of advices basis that event is something that we don't do it, because that is just playing to the act, playing to that particular situation. One is that we will always, and whenever our communication goes out, be it volatile markets or non-volatile markets, will always be investing in the long term. That is what we do, because that's the only way that's the panacea for investments, for any kind of problem from the markets. That's the primary thing that we do. Second is that we will, whenever we look at investors, so we also, beyond the communication that we do, we also do a lot of investor awareness program which is on ground. The exchange does that as part of the IPF. So there also we will go on ground. We end up, in fact, the exchange last year on average we do around 14 to 15,000 investor awareness programs. We reach out to 8 lakh people physically. So we are educating, we are percolating on ground, trying to tell them that this is not how it is. So on ground, so beyond the digital, we also go on ground and tell them about the right things to do and basically not get impacted by the market movements.
Can you share some more insights on this on-ground piece? Because yes, media digitally is important, traditional media is important, but I think on-ground, when face-to-face communication happens, can you share some insights around that?
So I think I spoke to you, there is a dedicated team. We have the Investor Protection Fund at BSE. In fact, we have the Investor Protection Fund is started in 1986, 1987 for that matter. After 2010, the regulator decided that this money or this fund can also be used to educate people. So we end up doing our investor awareness programs across the entire length and breadth of the country, right from the east to west to north to south, small centers. We, in fact, BSc with NSC has around 50 regional centers across the country. We use these centers to educate people. So we'll call investors, we'll educate them about the financial concepts, what is the right, what is the wrong thing, and try and basically let it percolate down. So when I say I have, or the exchange has done 14,000 awareness programs and educated maybe 8 lakh people, 8 lakh people will also educate some more, right? So
right.
that's like a
compounding effect.
Yeah, that's a compounding effect. That's a domino effect that will basically percolate across the country. That's what we do.
So do you sync up with the NISM in this, or NISM has a different module altogether?
So NISM has a separate model altogether, but the trainers and the people who are educating people are basically NISM trained. They are basically certified to speak. It's just not anybody who goes out and speak. These are the certified people, smart trainers as they are called, who will basically go and educate people around.
I'll move to a more global perspective now and try and understand, or rather, if it's fair to compare BSE with the New York Stock Exchange or the London Stock Exchange, which are also huge powerhouses when it comes to financial transactions. How do you see yourself differentiate from them? Obviously, we have far more number of investors, but any best practices or any specific comm strategies that you see the way they are doing it? Is any exchange of notes that takes place?
So we don't do much of exchange, that I would say. But there is two. So while yes, they are the powerhouses, but that's a very different ecosystem compared to where we are. They've already done the development. So if I just say that in the US, 55% of households have exposure to equities. In India, it's about 8 to 10%. So while 20 crore is the UCCs, unique client codes, around 8 to 10% of the households are basically exposed to equity. So the culture is very different there in terms of equity. So there it's more about basically telling them about the operational aspects. Most of their education would be about their operational aspect and possibly less about education. Here in India, we are more educating because we have just scratched the surface of the households in country. At 20 crores, we have, if I might say in terms of numbers, households would be around 8 to 10% have actually invested in the equity or the capital markets, if I might say. So there is a lot of potential. So while first is we have to get them inside the capital market ecosystem. So that's anyways the regulator and everybody is doing it, but also educate them and tell them what is the right, what is the wrong thing. So that's what we are doing. Beyond that, there is a lot of learning in the sense, whatever happens there, whatever they are doing in terms of strategy, we do keep looking at them, we do understand from them for that matter, and possibly wherever it is, we will localize it and use it for the Indian subcontinent for that matter, or for India for that matter.
Any special lessons or any specific lessons from global communication practices that you've integrated into BSE India strategy? At the end of the day, it is one of India's largest institutions, so there is clearly a lot of eyeballs looking at Bombay Stock Exchange.
Not exactly. As I said, I think we do understand, we do study what they do in terms of their investment communication. I think the global communication that goes out is far more less verbose, more visual, and that's what I personally believe in, right? So that's one thing that I have done it as part of my overall communication strategy as well as at BSE. We try and lessen the words, make it more visually appealing so that people understand. People will not read more than 100 words at a point of time. If you make very dense content, people will not understand. So that's something that I think is a big learning for me. From global players as well as domestically as well, I've seen the best of the best do that very effectively, and that's what we've tried to imbibe.
The bulls are the same.
The bulls are the same, yes.
So it'll be high time when we also have a little girl standing in front of that bull. Just how there is a bull in New York.
So I think we have investors standing ahead of the bull, or not ahead in front of the bull, we are behind the bull, we are supporting the bull for that matter, right? Because the way people are investing in the markets, from 5 crore or 5 crore UCCs, we are at 21 crores investors investing. So there is a lot of money and there is a lot of retail coming in. So we are actually behind the bull, supporting the bull, giving all the fodder to the bull, if I might say.
It's working as well.
And it doesn't mean that I am actually basically speaking about bull market as such. I'm just saying that a lot of money is going to enter the market.
Yes.
If I just look at mutual fund SIPs, I think last month was the record high in terms of mutual fund SIPs. Now that's disciplined money.
Correct.
That's people investing their hard-earned money on a monthly basis, investing in the market, and that's the way how you will make and create money. best of the best global gurus of investment will always tell you the same advice. Disciplined investing, long-term investing, that's how you're going to make money in the long term.
Tell me one thing, if somebody has to take advice from you, knowing that you work at BSE and they are probably a first jobber, what advice would you give him or her in starting their financial planning?
I would firstly tell them to save. I think with the way we are a very big consumption economy for that matter. We end up spending a lot on the domestic market. That's a good thing for the economy, right? But that might not be good for your wallet, for your investments for that matter. Because of course, when you start off your career, you might not be great in terms of the income numbers, right? So you will end up spending a lot. You might get into bad habits. Bad habits, when I say, is basically your credit habits, right? You will end up spending a lot. You might not save. So the first thing that you need to do is basically save money and then use the rest for investments. So first advice, at least 20% of your money should be saved later, and that's a number, that's a broad number, it's just a judgmental number that I'm giving, 20%, and the remaining you can use for your needs. That's one. Second is understand what you are investing in. As our MD clearly says, invest in what you understand what you invest. Only then will you basically make money. If you don't understand what you're investing in, you will blindly do whatever somebody says. That's called herd mentality also in investor biases, if I might say. A lot of people do that. I would suggest that first is save, second is look at the right products, right investment. If you don't understand, please do mutual funds. I just spoke about it previously. Mutual funds, if you do SIPs over a long term, you will make money. Also, you will add a lot of discipline to your investments. So please do that, and I think you will make money over the long term.
The reason I touched upon this because compared to the Western markets, it is a far higher consumption economy. They thrive on spending, and they already in the US you already have the 401 package that they call out, which has some equity exposure. Here it's not the case. Here we are pretty much restricted to provident fund or employee provident fund. Hence, I think the idea or the inculcation of investing early has to be brought down from the first, maybe in schools. I think one of the ministers earlier said financial literacy should be part of the school syllabus. In fact, kids should be taught right from school in order to invest early or save early and plan for their financial journey.
Absolutely. I think financial literacy should be part of the school syllabus. People understand numbers, people do maths, people do science, but financial literacy is something that people don't understand and how it is important. I was just looking at a number recently in terms of a study, how if somebody had invested from the age of 25 to 35 and stopped investing for the next 25 years, and somebody had started investing at the age of 35 and stopped at 60, person who had started early and kept the money for compounding would have grown more money than the person who started late. So it's about starting early. You start them early, you make that habit of educating them about investing at a younger age. They'll make a lot of wealth over the long term, which will in any ways benefit them as well as the economy for that matter.
So I'll now deep dive into the future of corporate communications, wherein if you look ahead, what trends do you foresee which are going to probably shape the future of corporate communications in the financial sector specifically?
I think from my perspective, I would say that one is use of technology in the right way to create the right kind of content. Use it in a way that it is useful, make it localized, make it more inclusive for that matter. I think if you don't make it inclusive, a lot of people will be left out of it. So make it inclusive, make it localized, make it regional, make it useful, and make it snackable. That's the way you can basically look at corporate communication in the future.
Understood. And when a lot of discussions happen over the table in terms of how an entity like BSE would want to be constantly communicating with its investors, how do you see transparency and ethical practices being spoken about in financial markets? How do you tread that?
So I think as a role, as a frontline regulator, that's what we are supposed to do. So firstly, in terms of ethical practices that we follow in our operational aspect of it, but beyond that also in terms of transparency, ethics, in terms of the communication that goes out, both offline as well as online. That's the most important thing, because you have to be as transparent possible. Thanks to the regulator, India is one of the most transparent markets in the world in terms of financial markets. That's a good thing. But beyond that, a lot of people don't understand that. Like a lot of numbers are being put out by everybody in terms of financial institution, but how many people understand that? So make it, so what our role at least on the communication side should be is to make it more understandable. So people understand what the numbers are beyond that. Also, that will firstly improve the transparency of the content and make it more ethical as well, where people will be able to understand and ethically understand and be very right in their investment decision for that matter.
Got it. There's so much, because you're working with BSE and you're part of their comms, there's so much emphasis on compliance and transparency and ethical best practices. How hard is it to keep reinforcing that? Because the audience at the end of the day also must be getting exhausted, because at the end of the day, it is also reinforcement. So you need to keep getting new versions of reinforcement happening.
Which is why I say, right?
It's very tedious on.
It is. So we are working in a very close space.
Yeah.
And it's just not me. We are 7 MIIs in the country. Beyond that, all financial institutions, mutual funds are also almost somewhere speaking the same language, the same output. So it's if I might say, tsunami of similar information being pushed out, right? In that sense. But how do we differentiate? How do you make it more simple? So I think somewhere there will be an overlap.
Yes.
Right? Everybody is going to speak about cyber fraud. Everybody is going to speak about the same topic. Two things to it. One is emphasis, or basically if you re-emphasize that again and again, at least that will make the investor also aware. So there, it's a positive angle to it, that I am re-emphasizing that this is wrong. This listening to somebody on social media might not be the right way. Right, or basically going to
tips.
Listening to or reading or basically falling into the traps is not the right way. So that's, in some way, everybody is speaking the same language. That's one. Second is differentiate, possibly try and see how localized you can be, right? Again, I think segmentation, that I spoke about, if you segment it in the right way, speak their language. So like a Gen Z, you will have to speak it in that particular language. A senior citizen, you'll have to maybe speak it in a more formal way, so that they understand it. And that's how I think will be the way forward for that matter.
Cool. I'll sum it up with one last final question. I think a lot of youngsters are watching this show of ours, and a lot of them are aspiring communication professionals, I'm pretty sure. If they have to come to you for advice to make a career in corporate communications in the financial industry, what would you tell them? Any 3 takeaways that you have so far?
Yeah, so I think I spoke to you that my career happened by accident, right? But somebody who's making a collective choice of finding or making a career in corporate communication, I would suggest that firstly understand, and whenever you write something or whatever you do, it has to be from the reader's perspective. That's the most important thing. If you think it from your perspective, you might understand the concept really well, right? But the other person doesn't understand. So if you think of it from the person's perspective, that he or she is able to understand it, that's when your communication will hit the nail. Otherwise, people will not understand that. Second, of course, use technology to your benefit, use it, but don't be completely dependent on that. Use it for your benefits, right? Use it to basically improve your communication, but also do your own bit of research. Third is be adaptive, be resilient. There's a lot of work, there is a lot of again, I think we spoke about it, that we are working in a very close space, right? So there will be people will expect you to do new things. So you have to be a little more resilient. You have to think about it, right? Your bosses might say that this is the same stuff, but you have to basically think beyond, think about ideas. I think for me, whenever you have to observe a lot. You have to observe a lot. There will be a lot of learning that you can do even in your regular day-to-day things, right? Keep observing, keep understanding that, till somewhere at the back of the mind you will understand that and use it in your communication thing. That's what I do. I think these are these basic takeaways that I can speak about.
Awesome. Prahlad, it was a pleasure having you. You've been as solid as the stock markets and as bullish as one can get. Thank you so much for joining us and lending your time.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Prahlad Salian's expertise underscores the critical role of strategic communication in building trust and driving innovation within financial institutions. His insights provide a roadmap for navigating the complexities of modern corporate communications, emphasizing the importance of adaptability, creativity, and stakeholder engagement. Thank you for this valuable discussion, Prahlad. Thank you so much. Thank you, viewers, for joining us on HT Brand Leadership Series. There's more coming up next.